Good morning, everyone, and welcome into another edition of WST Sunday Live. My name's Hrabchak. In a moment, I'll be joined by my co-host, Lyss Houde, and together we'll break down the Jets' 4-3 overtime loss to the Toronto Maple Leafs last night. Saturday night, hockey day in Canada. Great atmosphere inside the building, and it's Max Domi with the OT winner as the Jets' winning streak gets snapped at 4. And it was a very entertaining game throughout. You know, the Jets did hold a 2-0 lead at one point. They held a 3-0 lead in the third. And as we've seen so many times this year, they blow a lead in the third period, and the Toronto Maple Leafs end up winning it 4-3 in overtime. The Jets are going to take on the Hawks on Monday, the Blues on Tuesday. So we're going to preview the upcoming week as well. I see some people in chat already, giving their condolences for my 49ers. Lucky enough, it was such a blowout that honestly, I didn't even tune in. I mean, the Jets game was going on. The Seahawks ran the opening kickoff back, and that was the game-winning score. They went up 7-0 on the opening kickoff and won 41-6. So if I just closed my laptop at that point, maybe I wouldn't have missed anything. But yeah, that was a tough one. Usually as a fan, you want to be able to blame the refs or say they got lucky or something. Yeah, nothing lucky about a 41-6 game. That was a tough one. So the Jets lose to the Leafs, the Niners lose to the Seahawks. I had a great Saturday. I hope everyone else had a great Saturday as well. Let's bring in my co-host on this Sunday morning and see how her Saturday was. Liz, how are you doing this morning, Sunday Live?
Well, I'm good this morning.
Yes.
I'm
yesterday
bad now, though. My microphone disconnected, and it's not reconnecting because I'm still in this call, and so it doesn't like to acknowledge my presence. So that's a bit of an irritation, nice and early this morning. But I hope the audio quality is good enough for this banger of a show that we're about to share with everyone on this fine morning.
This is going to be a fun show because we're going to talk about last night's game, and we're going to start off with that. But as people in chat are mentioning, the Logan Stanley discussion, it feels like I've had FOMO this week, Liz, because on Winnipeg Sports Talk, on many other programs, they're talking about Logan Stanley every day, and we haven't shared our thoughts yet. But we are here now to share our thoughts on the Logan Stanley discussion. We can't wait. And Liz prepared some notes, some rants. Oh no, not again. Yeah, people are worried. But hey, this is Winnipeg Stan talk. This is what we're here for, folks. But we'll start with last night's game because the Jets, obviously, that's a game where it felt like you lose the point as opposed to gaining a point. You know, maybe if you play bad and force a game into overtime, you scrape away a point. That one was a game where that second point really got away from them. It was the Maple Leafs getting the win in overtime. Liz, what are kind of your initial thoughts, takeaways from last night's game? Great atmosphere inside the building with the Leafs fans, as it always is. There's always tons of Leafs fans in the building. But when it comes to the Jets' inability to close out games, it feels like that was just another example where they played good for maybe the majority of the game. Maybe they deserve 2 points, but the key moments in the third period end up killing them.
No, you're totally right. And I think that this is a tale that we see pretty frequently in hockey games with NHL teams, whatever. You know, we talked about it in the Los Angeles game. We've talked about it many times before, where this was a game where it was very evident in the third period that one team was chasing a lead and one team was protecting one. And unfortunately, sometimes when you're focusing too hard on protecting a lead, Josh Morrissey said it to us himself after the game, kind of sat back a little bit. And it's one of those things that you could fight it both ways, right? Because on one hand, you need to adjust to the additional pressure that your opponent is about to put on. And whatever that looks like is important to make sure you're kind of mitigating whatever they're about to start creating. But then on the other hand, you played a certain way that got you to the point where you have said lead anyway.
Right.
Why divert from what's been working for you in this particular game environment and setting, right? So this was a particular situation where perhaps the Jets should have continued to kind of push the way that they were earlier in the game. I thought that their power play looked a little bit more exciting once they kind of finally got possession. I thought that, the lines that we've been talking about a little bit more lately, being that second line and that fourth line, looked like they had a bit of juice and buzz early in the game as well. So a lot of things were kind of continuing to trend in the right direction and whatnot. And it's a game that, like you said, at the end of the day, it feels a little bit more like the losing streak Jets just to put together a decent effort, lose by a goal. We're not going to talk about Groundhog Day the same way we used to, because there have been some games that have interrupted this pattern of late. But man, that's a stinger for sure.
There's been a lot of stingers in this run of losses, right? Like, and here's the thing, Lyss. The Jets they won 4 straight and then took this game to overtime. They got 9 of a possible 10 points in this 5-game stretch after the 11-game losing streak. And, we talked to the players last night, Scott O'Neill. All 3 of them said, like, yeah, absolutely, you take that. But still, in the moment, that game hurts. That you could have been 10 out of 10, and you were in a great spot for it to be 10 out of 10. And it just wasn't the case for this Winnipeg Jets team. A game where, Kyle Connor scores late after a power play. It's technically an even strength goal, but the power play unit is still on the ice. That's how late it was. Alex Iafallo gets a tip-in goal to start things off. Really nice. Deflection from the high slot. Nice shot from Stanley from the point. Throw that in there because we'll be talking about Stanley a lot. Nino Niederreiter gets a goal. Originally, the first goal of the game, Iafallo was announced as Niederreiter, and we were all thinking, what is going on? Did Nino even touch that? And turns out they changed it back to Iafallo. Nino does get his own goal, though. No doubt about this one, as he cleans up a rebound in front. Jets go up 3-1, and then Ekman Larsson scores 3-2 with 5 minutes into the third period. And then with 5 minutes left in the third period, or just under, Bobby McMahon tips in a shot, and the Leafs take or tie the game 3-3, goes into overtime. And then the overtime sequence, the Jets start with their top guns. They get a few chances. The Leafs get the puck back. They get a few chances, and it's just kind of back and forth, and 3 minutes of overtime go by, and then Matthews and Domi get a 2-on-1, and Hellebuyck sells out for the shot. Matthews does a little pump fake, slide over to Domi. He has all the time in the world, all the space in the world to pick his spot, and he does. And the Jets lose 4-3. And Lyss, I think the Groundhog Day part of this one, for me, is at least you like a lot of what they did, especially in the first period. I asked Scott O'Neill about it post-game, where it was 0-0, but the Jets completely controlled the play in the first period. I think that the scoring chances were 7-0 in the Jets' favor. And then you look in the
high danger chances were 7-0.
Sorry, high danger chances.
I have the natural stat pulled up, and at 5-on-5 it has them at 14-2 regular scoring chances. So not bad.
Pretty good. And look, finishing has been an issue with this team too. There have been a lot of times this year where they are controlling play like that, and they have nothing to show for it. And that was another one of those examples. But they still got up a 2-0 lead. And I don't know. I don't know if it's just this season so far has programmed me where it's a 2-goal lead for the Jets, and I'm like, man, I feel like they're going to blow this still. Or if it's they're sitting back on a lead, they're trying to protect a 1-goal lead. Scott O'Neill, after the games and practices and every single day, will talk about how they need to stay in these 1-goal games. They're winning by 2 with 15 minutes left. That's not a game you need to stay in. I think that's a game that you need to put your foot down and win, because you're the better team. And it just looked like they decided to sit back. The Leafs took it to them in the third period, Lyss, and it ended up with Max Domi getting the OT winner. I don't know what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I think what I liked about that though was that, again, there are certain things that we pulled from all of the wins that all the close games that the Jets had over that losing streak that were like, okay, but this is an interesting point if you're looking for a positive that we could maybe circle if you'd like. And one thing that I really liked is that the Jets, as we've kind of identified, really did outplay Toronto in that first period. They had tons of looks, kind of off the cycle, off the rush, different areas, different lines, against different lines with different pairings, lots of different ways they're creating offense. Then they go to the room at the intermission or whatever, and it's 0-0. the Winnipeg Jets possibly of old, and teams that you could, describe as fragile, teams that you could describe as, in a very expendable position, whatnot, they may not carry said momentum into that next period. It's a new frame. If the team they're playing against kind of resets and goes out there, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how good you played in that first period if you can't continue that into the next period and actually put some goals on the board. So I liked that their goals came in the period that wasn't as strong as the one before, but they were able to actually score a couple of goals. I like that. That was important, I think, for me. So I think that if there's one thing you want to kind of circle, it's that they didn't need to score in the exact moments that they were doing well. They were able to kind of get on the horse. But again, it's really hard because it's like, this is a professional hockey team who won the President's Trophy last year. I feel like the bar should be a little bit higher than this, but we exist in the reality that's been created for us. And so I want to kind of point that out, I guess.
No, totally. And I'm glad CMAC brought this up. We were missing puck luck in this one. 2 goals that Hockey Night in Canada thought were in, and they put up the goal graphic, but nope, crazy post.
Yeah.
The one Kyle Connor chance, the horn in the arena went off, and they started, getting into the goal song. And it was like, okay, I guess that's in. And it was just never in. Like, you look at the overhead angle, and that puck was just never in. And then the one in the third period, Jonathan Taves, glorious chance from the middle of the slot on the power play, and it actually goes crossbar, post, and out. And it's still laying there for the Jets to kind of make a play, and still they aren't able to get that done. So, again, it's a game where you like a lot of it, and stop me if you've heard me say this before, but if this was last year, I'd love to talk about how the Jets were the better team and just missed out on some puck luck and lost a point. But oh well, whatever. We'll see what happens going forward. And they absolutely did in this game. But points are just so crucial for this team right now that it's tough. I mean, you need those points, and the Maple Leafs took it to them in the third and then won it in overtime. And the Jets had their looks in overtime and had their looks in the third too to extend the lead. The Taves one that I just mentioned. But these are the kind of games that the Jets have failed to close out so far this season, and a big reason why they are where they are in the standings. Speaking of the standings list, let's bring up the wild card standings, because the Jets had lost 11 straight, and that put them 11 points out of a wild card spot. Now they've gone 4-0-1. They've got 9 out of a possible 10 points, and they've only leapfrogged one team. They went from 32nd to 31st in the NHL. They only leapfrogged Vancouver, who is, in free fall. They lost 6-0 to the Oilers last night. What a way to end off Hockey Day in Canada. And then they're still 7 points out of a playoff spot. And if you look, there are 3 Pacific teams, Sharks, Ducks, Kings, and even the Kraken all the way up here. 4 Pacific teams tied at 51 points. So what the Winnipeg Jets will need is not only to go on a heater, and again, 4-0-1 gets you from 11 points to 7. And that's without losing a game in regulation at all in this 5-game stretch, right? If, say, they go 8-0-2, so they replicate this over a 10-game sample and they get within 4 points, then you still have the Sharks, Ducks, Kings, and Kraken all around the same points, and you'll need 2 of those teams to really fall out of favor, or 3 of those teams, excuse me, because, Utah has kind of separated themselves, I guess, 3 points. But Nashville's playing well. The Jets play the Blues and the Blackhawks this week. Like, the making up ground in the standings is very, very tough. You look at the East, and the Toronto Maple Leafs went on like a 9-1-3 run. And at one point, we're at the top of their conference. Now they've slid back out of a playoff spot, and the East is a lot tighter. But just for the Winnipeg Jets' sake, it's going to be really tough to make ground if a 4-0-1 stretch just gets you 4 points closer, and yet there are a bunch of teams that are right around it at 51 points list.
Yeah, it's this is actually really funny that you bring this up and that we're talking about this now, because I think as we get into more discussion around a certain player a little bit later, this is going to come back into play as well. This whole idea of what the standings and what the NHL looks like right now, with so many teams kind of in this middle and gray area where we aren't going to know who the buyers and the sellers in this market are until a lot closer to the trade deadline, just because there's so much room for things to change. And I think, it's interesting because we look ahead to the trade deadline and we see it as being just under 2 months away. But the reality is it's a lot more urgent than that because of how much time we're going to be spending away from NHL hockey in February. There's only a handful of games left between now and the trade deadline, which is a crazy thought to kind of have as we sit here in the middle of January. But there's a ton of ground to cover, exactly like you said. And we're talking about Pacific teams because of the wild card. These meaningful Central Division spots are so far out of the question because not only can you look at the specific point spread right now, but also look at the trends of these teams. I know that the Colorado Avalanche and the Minnesota Wild haven't been as good as they were a month ago or whatever you want to call it, but there's no real signs, real red flags being shot up in the way that they're playing that should make you go, the Winnipeg Jets will be better than this team. The Winnipeg Jets could be better than this team. There's nothing saying that in the way either of these teams are playing right now. So all you're doing is kind of scraping together these best possible outcomes over, if they go 5-2 and each of their next 7 game stretches, they'll be able to make a wild card. It's fascinating times because at the end of the day, obviously, I think everyone would prefer for this team to get into the playoffs if you're, all things are equal otherwise, to have some fun, whatever. But if you're on Team Tank, if you want them to get a high lottery pick, or if you're worried about how they're going to manage assets in order to try and get into said playoffs, I completely understand your reservations with, seeing the parity that exists in kind of the Western Conference, the bottom half of it there, and getting false hope about what the next couple months could look like for this club.
For sure. And look, the playoff line is right around 90 points. So to get to 92 from where the Winnipeg Jets are today, they need to go 22-9-4 the rest of the season. So again, that's a lot of stretches where you're playing good. That's a high point pace. I'm not exactly sure what that is exactly in terms of, the point pace at a 22-9-4 record. But that's something that that the Jets, in a lot of ways last year, Lyss, I remember we all were saying after the 15-1 start, barring an epic collapse, the Winnipeg Jets had more or less made the playoffs after the 15-1 start. Like, that is an absurd cushion to give yourself right off the hop. This year, an 11-game losing streak, like, I'd venture to say, in the same way a 15-1 start can get you into the playoffs, an 11-game losing streak can almost get you out of it. And they'll have to, like, this 4-0-1 stretch with 9 points out of the last 10 is awesome. It's great. If they want to make the playoffs, they're going to need to do that a few more times. And they're going to need to do that starting this week. They play Chicago, they play St. Louis, and then so on and so forth in the month of January. But it's a tough time for the Winnipeg Jets. Just back to last night's game really quickly. I do want to give a shout out to the top line because that line with Iafallo hadn't been as dynamic, obviously, without Velarde on it. Velarde moved down to the second line. But last night against Toronto, 13-1 in scoring chances, 17-7 in shots on goal for the top line. So they dominated their minutes. And Kyle Connor gets the goal. It was right after a power play shift, so not really 5-on-5, but technically 5-on-5. So you can mark that down as an even strength goal for those guys. But yeah, Lyss, is there anyone else from last night's game that you thought stood out? I wanted to give a shout out to the top line, but anyone else from last night's game?
Yeah, I don't know if I want to put them necessarily in the same category as the top line in terms of you said it perfectly, that was a line that we kind of clued in on because they hadn't been as good since Velarde had left, and everyone was so excited about the Perfetti Taves Velarde line. It's like, but if your big guns that have been winning you every game that you have won this year can't perform, what's that look like in the long term? So it was great to see them have a dominant performance, but maybe not so dominant of a performance. But Elias Salomonsson gets back into the lineup. I know that he played the game before as well, but this was Elias Salomonsson's first game at home since being recalled, and he got paired with Dylan Samberg, and they were given a pretty hard match with the Austin Matthews line. Yep. So I was really pleased, especially earlier in the game when everyone was firing, right? Like we talked about how, tipped the numbers were in Winnipeg's favor. That means that everyone kind of has to be winning their matchups to a certain degree. Mm-hmm. And I thought Elias Salomonsson looked great. There were a couple times that he really used his physicality in the corners to separate the players from the pucks. There were some times that he had some great outlet passes, whether it was kind of across to Dylan Samberg under pressure or straight out of the zone to spur someone on a rush, all these different things. I thought Elias Salomonsson looked good, and, not an easy situation to walk into for this player, right? The right-handed defense of the Winnipeg Jets has been a question and a conversation all year, from Dylan DeMello and Neil Pionk down to Luke Shen and Colin Miller. So, getting tasked with whatever matchup Dylan Samberg was going to get is not an easy feat. So I thought he looked good. Was it his best game of all time? No. Is he going to get better? Absolutely. But I think it goes to show that this team understands where they're at, where this player is at, that they were willing and able to play him against the Austin Matthews minutes in a game that they needed and wanted to win.
For sure. And look, Elias Salomonsson has come back and played the Minnesota Wild on the road against Kirill Kaprizov, Matt Boldy, all of the talented players in that forward core. And he got the Austin Matthews matchup at home against the Toronto Maple Leafs. So, look, Elias Salomonsson, and I want to temper expectations almost a little bit because it's a tough situation where let me just walk this back to the injuries. So Miller, Pionk, and Fleury are all out right now. That gives the Jets the flexibility to essentially call up Salomonsson. Miller had knee surgery, Scott Arniel told us yesterday. So he's out. It is very similar to Connor Hellebuck's knee surgery. So call it 3 to 6 weeks because Hellebuck was 4 to 6 weeks, came back a week early. Call it 3 to 6 weeks for Colin Miller. That brings us to the Olympic break. Hayden Fleury still needs testing done next week. Per Scott Arniel, Neil Pionk, nothing has changed there, still week to week. So let's say Elias Salomonsson is here to the Olympic break. Then, coming out of the Olympic break list, the Jets play 5 games before the trade deadline. And then after the trade deadline, if Elias Salomonsson's not up playing regular minutes with the Winnipeg Jets, I don't know what they're doing, A. And so my take around all of this, with how comfortable Elias Salomonsson has looked to me in the last 2 games, is if he plays another game with the Manitoba Moose this season, that to me won't make any sense. And it'll kind of just be a waste of time for a number of people. Elias Salomonsson, first and foremost, with the valuable NHL experience, because make no mistake, Elias Salomonsson getting 40 whatever games it'll end up being will make him a better player for opening night next season. 100%. So there's that. It's a waste of time for the Winnipeg Jets, because your best prospect that you hold in high regard, Kevin Cheveldayoff, when I asked him, mentioned Elias Salomonsson, your best prospect is missing out on valuable NHL experience if he's not playing here. So there's that. It's also a waste of time for Luke Schenn, because Luke Schenn, Lyss, has it basically not officially, but essentially publicly requested a trade through his agent, through many members of the media. He wants off this team. So if coming out of the Olympic break, they run back, they put Miller, Pionk, and Fleury in, and they keep Schenn in, and they're running with these guys for the next 5 games, and then the trade deadline comes and goes, and then maybe they move Schenn, maybe they move Stanley. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Like, what are we doing here? Like, Elias Salomonsson comes in on the road against a top 4 team in the NHL in the Minnesota Wild and looks comfortable, looks poised, makes a lot of great plays. Last night, there was one play, 3-on-2, broke it up, throws a reverse hit in the corner on Austin Matthews, not a small guy, and then breaks the puck out. And it's like, okay, there's a flash right there, and the large sample might not be exactly where you want it to be right now, but if you can get more of those flashes from Elias Salomonsson now, opening night next season, he'll be a better player for it. And the Winnipeg Jets, who want to make the playoffs this year and next, are a better team with Elias Salomonsson in their lineup. I don't think that's a hot take. Both this year and next.
That's exactly it, right? Because I think the thing was last year, for example, if you look at also, are people getting so sick of last year? I'm like, I understand it's the easiest comparison, but holy smokes, I'm sorry to keep doing this. But last year, there were a lot of players kind of in the depths of Winnipeg's forward lineup that there was a realistic, argument to be had for the who do you take out with the forward groups. And people wanted Nikita Chibrikov and Brad Lambert to play. And it was like, if this player doesn't work out, what are you foregoing? Because the bottom line, the bottom 6, whatever, was scoring goals and they were winning games and all these different things. And so was the middle 6 sometimes. So was the top line sometimes. And so there was a legitimate opportunity cost question of like taking someone out, like, is your team going to be worse off? This team is not worse off with Elias Salomonsson playing. The only person that I think, he took some reps with Josh Morrissey last night, whatever. I think if Dylan DeMello was sitting for Elias Salomonsson, there's a chance that the Winnipeg Jets are kind of worse off, just if that means that then Elias Salomonsson, Neil Pionk, and Luke Schenn, one of them or all of them has to take the tougher matchups and try and elevate Josh Morrissey and all this different stuff. There's an argument for that. That's not going to happen. There's not a world to me in which playing Elias Salomonsson makes this team worse. So if you're in the argument of, but they're still going to try and contend and still going to try and push, I think that he's a better right-handed defenseman in the current fabric of this team than some of their other options. So I'm in agreement with you. I think that it's important that this player gets reps now. This is one of the better environments that I think you can put a defenseman into right now. Talk about can't put them in when they're winning, can't put them in when they're losing. What about when they're in the ethical tank, right? I think we're back in ethical tank territory where they got their wins, they got the fan base back on board, they got everyone excited again, and now who knows what's to come, who knows what's next, and they're still 31st in the NHL. So I think it's really important that this player plays meaningful minutes with this club for the rest of the season. I'm in agreement with you.
Yeah, and I don't see why, like, if the goal, you're in 31st, and if you still believe that this team wants to make the playoffs this season, he's a better option right now, in my opinion. And the real goal should be, or might be, for this Winnipeg Jets team, depending on how they do maybe going into the Olympic break here, will be to focus on next year. And if you want Elias Salomonsson to be an impact player for your team next year, he's much better off playing 40 games in the NHL than going back down. Like, I truly believe that. And it's not because he's going to be some superstar. I'm not trying to, Zdeno Chara this thing with Logan Stanley that everyone wants to throw out this week. But I'm not saying he's going to be like this absolute stud. I just think valuable NHL experience can help him be a third pair guy next year. Like, maybe they keep DeMello on the top pair next year and Salomonsson comes in and is in a sheltered third pair role to start the year and then maybe works his way up to the top pair or something. But if they want Salomonsson to be a top pair guy next year, I think he's better off playing NHL minutes now, Lyss, making these mistakes when the stakes are low, because as you mentioned, they're still in 31st. The stakes aren't relatively high here. Get these mistakes out of the way, make some nice reverse hits on Austin Matthews, who's, not a small guy, scored 70 in the National before, no big deal, and win your minutes. Like, he's doing fine, like more than fine. He's passing against the Wild and the Leafs, getting the Matthews matchup. Like, I don't know. His first stint of 4 games wasn't great. I'll fully admit that. But these first 2 games, I don't know why he would ever go back down. I don't know. That's just where I'm at.
I really latched on to one thing that you said, which is maybe means getting him third pairing minutes next year. You're saying that you should leave your third pairing kind of expendable so that players can play their way into this lineup and play onto their team. You think that's a good point of entry for a player to get in?
Here we go. Back to the Winnipeg Stan talk. It's time.
Winnipeg Stan talk. Are we doing it? Winnipeg Salomonsson talk did have its moment. It did have its moment.
Still tracks with the S. Nice. Winnipeg Salomonsson talk.
Thank you.
Yeah. We can get to Stan now. I think I've said all I've needed to say in regards to Elias Salomonsson. I have very high hopes for him. I've always had very high hopes for him, and I'd like to see him here the rest of the season. And again, I outlined it earlier. I don't think that's that hot of a take when you realize he's here to the Olympic break anyways because of injuries. And then coming out of the Olympic break, there's 5 games between then and the trade deadline when one of those defensemen, if not multiple, will be traded. So I don't think it's that hot of a take to be like, oh, Salomonsson should be here 5 extra games than he's already going to be, It might sound hot, but it's not really, in my opinion, that hot of a take. Let's get to it, Lyss. Winnipeg Stan talk. Do you want me to just give you the floor here? Because the conversation this week is okay. The conversation this week is to re-sign or to trade. That's the I can run a poll. Absolutely. If people want. We've ran a poll like every day on the big show. Maybe I'll throw a poll.
I'm curious to hear what our current audience, those who are live listening right now, how they're feeling. It might change the way I use my language and how harsh I am with my particular opinion on this situation. We'll see.
Logan Stanley, I am starting a poll. People can vote in the chat. It's been slowly creeping towards re-sign, and on Friday's show, I believe it was 56-44 re-sign instead of trade, because that was the game coming out of the back scratcher clapper against the Minnesota Wild. So, do you want I don't know how to tee you up for?
No, okay. Well, here's what I'll do. To start, I'm gonna kind of continue on the conversation that we were just having.
Sure.
The joke that I was making about the Salomonsson coming in on the third pairing, whatever. I think the first thing that we need to do is acknowledge where this team is at, who this player is, all this different stuff. There is no position other than maybe your 4th line left winger that is more expendable than a bottom pairing left-handed defenseman. This is the most replacement level player that you could possibly have on a team. Everyone else has a more important role. Everyone else is more difficult to find. A bottom pairing left-handed defenseman, the most expendable role on the Winnipeg Jets, or bottom pairing or bottom line left winger. Okay. So that's an important thing to acknowledge, right?
Yes, it is.
Now, this conversation right now, if we were talking about, this in training camp and should they extend Stan another year for $1 million or whatever you want to talk about, third pairing money, that's a different conversation to me. What we're talking about right now completely contradicts the whole idea of this like internal cap, all this different stuff. And what my question is if you're in team extend Logan Stanley, are you saying that this team should trade Josh Morrissey? Are you saying that this team should get rid of Dylan Sandberg? Or are you saying that none of their left-handed defensive prospects should ever play for the next 5+ years with this team? Those are your only options, okay? Because if you give term to a bottom pairing defenseman, you completely, because right now you already have Sandberg and Morrissey locked up to a certain degree. And this is a player that cannot play higher in the lineup, okay? When this player played with Neil Pionk this year, the numbers for the chances that were created against, the chances that created for, all these things, they were bad. They were pretty bad, okay? So you're locking up a player that cannot play higher in the lineup than the bottom pairing. And the way the Winnipeg Jets tend to deploy, and for as long as Josh Morrissey's on this team, I would assume the way this team is going to deploy their defensemen is that the second pairing is going to take a lot of the matchup minutes to try and free up Josh Morrissey to create a little bit of offense and play with the top line, the Mark Scheifele line, whatever, who isn't necessarily going to get matched head-to-head with opposing team's top line. How is anyone else ever supposed to play left-handed defense for this team? Elias Salomonsson yesterday is one of the most highly touted prospects in this organization, has to come in and play Austin Matthews minutes because they have term given to a guy who's on their third pairing right-handed D who cannot play higher in the lineup. That is not a recipe for success for most potential NHL players to come in. So if you want Alphonse Frey, Sacha Boumedienne, anyone else to come in and play for the Jets in the next little bit, you can't extend this player. Okay, so I just needed to get that one out of the way first in terms of like the environment of the team. That's not even my rant, just so you know.
No, that's good. You're moving lines here. Trade is 66%. So maybe Sunday Live, a little more analytics-based audience, no nose puck a little bit more. No, I'm kidding. Or Sunday Live audience a little bit better. No, I'm kidding. Winnipeg Sports Talk fans, puck. It's climbing up to 68% trade with 50 votes. Here, I'll tee you back up in a moment. I just want to mention Logan Stanley's shooting percentage. So shooting percentage is just the amount of shots you're taking and how often they're going in. So if you have a 5% shooting percentage, 5% of your shots on goal go in, end up in goals, right? That's shooting percentage. Stanley's shooting percentage right now is 16.67%. Okay, that is his shooting percentage. He scored 8. Yeah, nice. He scored 8 goals this season, and it's at 16.7%. His career average is 4.6 shooting percentage, hangs more around 2% in certain seasons, and now this year it has spiked. It has absolutely ballooned to, right? So let me just say this. Logan Stanley's shooting percentage at 16.67% is higher than the following players. Connor McDavid, is that guy good? Connor Bedard, 15.9% is Bedard's shooting percentage, which is, of his 3 seasons of his NHL career, by far the highest for him, for Connor Bedard. Okay, A. Jason Robertson, big Team USA snub. How do they not take that guy? Tage Thompson, Team USA, on it. David Pastrnak, is that guy any good? Alexander Ovechkin, does he score goals? I don't know. Kirill Kaprizov, how much is that guy getting paid? Macklin Celebrini, Team Canada. Austin Matthews, Team USA. Kyle Connor, Team USA. And hundreds of more players. Those are just some of the most talented players. But and then here's the thing. Those are all forwards. You might be thinking, yeah, because when you go to defensemen, among defensemen with 25 games played or more this season, he's second in the entire league in shooting percentage, behind only John Klingberg. 17.3%. Stanley is at 16.7%. So that puts him higher than Josh Morrissey, Zach Werenski, Cale Makar, Matthew Schaefer, Lane Hudson, Evan Bouchard, Roman Josi, Quinn Hughes, and every other defenseman in the National Hockey League, except for John Klingberg. This guy's on an absolute shooting heater. Unless you think he's the second most talented shooting defenseman in the National Hockey League, more talented than Evan Bouchard, Bush bombs. They talk about that in Edmonton. Hughes, Werenski, the list goes down. Josh Morrissey. This is an unbelievable shooting tear for a guy in a contract year. And I do think it's crazy that Neil Pionk had this reputation as a guy who just goes off in contract years. And even last year, people were like, oh, I'm weary about paying Pionk because he's in a contract year. And we've just decided to completely slide past that for Logan Stanley, who's on a shooting tear, because for whatever reason, I guess they drafted and developed him, even though they traded for Pionk when he was like 20. Like, is that not developing? I don't know. But Stanley is on an absolute shooting heater in a contract year. And if I was the GM of a National Hockey League team, I could not bring myself to pay a guy who has a career like 3% shooting percentage coming into this season and is currently knocking on the door of 17, higher than all the players that I just mentioned. I can't do it. I just can't.
Well, and we saw this comment earlier this month from Julian Brisebois in Tampa Bay. Darren Radish is having a generational run right now. Darren Radish, who is an undrafted, not a career NHL player, and pardon me?
They're not paying him.
No,
yeah, they're waiting. Yeah.
Him. But here's the thing about shooting percentages, okay? Right now, the top 5 players in the National Hockey League in shooting percentage are Carl Grundstrom, Colin Graf, Alex Newhook, Tyson Forrester, and Jake Neighbors, okay? Shooting percentages when they are incredibly yoked and outside of the realm. And that's for guys who are over 200 minutes played, because some guys have like 1 goal, 1 shot, and it's not, you can't include them. But when your shooting percentage is yoked like crazy, like, it doesn't necessarily mean that the best shooting percentage is the best player in your team and stuff like that, right? Like, there are certain players, like Kyle Connor has a better baseline shooting percentage than like a 4th line guy because he picks his shots better and all these different things. Not every shooting, you can't just say, okay, like the baseline for a player is 10%. Every player is a little bit different and stuff like that. But I think 2 things can be true at once. One is that Stanley is feeling himself and he's picking his shots better and all these different things.
Totally.
But there are a lot of other kind of factors at play. But when it comes to your shooting percentage and all this sort of stuff, like his expected goal totals are still quite low in the percentage of what he's controlling, but his actual goal totals and his actual goal share is significantly higher. And when there is a massive, massive, massive gap between your expected goals total and your actual goals total, that is the time to start making changes in the market, okay? If you have a player whose expected goals total is so incredibly high and their actual goals for percentage is like super, super low, that is the time to buy low on a guy like that, because you know that those numbers, the further you get into the season, the more minutes you play, the closer they are going to get together. That is how this works. So when you have a player whose actual goals for percentage, his actual goal share is far exceeding what his expected goals are, that is the time to sell this player, okay? A couple stats for your consideration. You want to look at goal share versus expected goal share. With Colin Miller, goal share, 10%, expected goal share, 36%. That, again, those are likely going to get a little bit closer together. Now, they only have 109 minutes played together. The rest of his partners on the team, the 2 guys he's played the most with, Neil Pionk and Luke Schenn. Neil Pionk, 212 minutes, 38% expected goal share, 67% actual goal share. Luke Schenn, 48% expected goal share, 54% goal share. So those 2 numbers are pretty close together, and you can leave those a little bit. But in that particular matchup with Neil Pionk, like that is a number, those 2 things have to converge a little bit more. So there is never, if we want to start talking about markets, that's when you're going to get into my real rant, is about trade markets and how free markets work. This is the time when value gets a little bit skewed with what a player is doing. And look, this is all saying good for you for getting yourself into a situation where we're having this kind of conversation where people are having, like, even last summer, even the biggest truthers, whatever, people would have been like, extend it by another 1 by 1, keep it going. Now that we're in 5 by 5 range, that's when I'm like, this is a conversation I literally can't even be having right now.
Yeah, like, we should have prefaced this conversation by saying this is awesome for Logan Stanley. And if you're in the building at Canada Life Center, you can sense the excitement. Every time he touches the puck, people want him to, people are yelling, shoot. You can feel the buzz in the arena. Last night, he got a secondary assist, or it was announced as a secondary assist. It ended up being the primary assist, the Iafallo goal. And he got a louder cheer than Iafallo did for the goal. Like, the fans are all in on Logan Stanley, and it is awesome for him. And there is no, like, I said this earlier on a post-game show this week. There's an element of heat check to his game right now where, in basketball, guy hits a few jumpers and then will come down and just chuck a shot from half court and it'll go in, and it's like, what on earth? It's because he's feeling it. Logan Stanley's doing the exact same thing right now. He's shooting the puck more than he ever has in his career. His shots on goal per game are higher. Shot attempts per game are higher. His goals per game, obviously higher. Career high was 1 going into the season. Now it's at 8. This guy's feeling it, and he's shooting the puck more, and they're going in more than they ever have. So why wouldn't he? And this is awesome. For a guy that we would honestly be debating in training camp, like, oh, is he a candidate for waivers? Now it's getting floated out there in articles that he might be a $25 million player on the UFA market. That's something. And we'll get to your rant on the market in a second, Lyss. But I want to say this. Logan Stanley, we're not considering him in all of this because he's having a great year. He's playing out of his mind, and he's currently on the 31st ranked team in the National Hockey League. What is better for Logan Stanley's value, Lyss? Playing out the rest of the season as a Winnipeg Jet, or getting traded to a contender and scoring some big goals in the playoffs and then hitting the open market? I think Logan Stanley's going to want to hit the open market right now and have a few bids at his feet. So why, and the Jets absolutely cannot keep him past the deadline without a contract. Cannot. Because you're just letting him walk, and there's value there. There's value.
I disagree with that. I think it would be better to let him walk than it would be to extend him.
Okay, sure. But my thing is more so there's value on the player, and you're missing out on value if you're going to let him just walk to UFA anyway.
You're leaving a ton on the table. I agree with you there. I think it's bad either way. But yeah, no, for sure.
So that's where I think Logan Stanley should be at. The players are considering themselves in all of this for sure. And I don't know,
he's never had a real payday. He's been a league min guy, whatever, for his whole career. If this is money on the table,
UFA contract year heater, he's going to the open market, or at least he should. And what if he gets traded to Florida and throws a few big hits in the playoffs and scores a goal or two and kills penalties for them? Maybe his price goes up even more. I don't know. I think Logan Stanley is in a great spot to cash in, and he might be better off actually going to a contender and playing in some playoff games this year, as opposed to just signing what the Jets give him now, because I don't know, he's been doing it now. I think there's that part of all of it. The last thing I want to mention before we throw it to your rant on the market, Lyss, is Rasmus Andersson is essentially out the door in Calgary. Everyone was shocked that he played yesterday because it seems as though a trade has been agreed to with someone. Vegas is in the mix. Boston is in the mix. Rasmus Andersson was drafted by the Calgary Flames. It's almost like they drafted and developed him, and he's a pending UFA, and he's 29 years old, and they're cashing in because you want to know why? They're not a good team. They're not in the playoffs. And the Jets are 31st in the NHL, and they drafted and developed a guy, and he's a UFA, and you cash in. And that's just what teams do. The Calgary Flames are cashing in on Rasmus Andersson because they're not winning the cup this year. I don't know. This is just what you do. I don't know. I'll let you go on your market rant now. I just wanted to bring up Rasmus Andersson because the parallels are exactly the same, where it's a guy drafted in 2015, Anderson, versus 2016 in Stanley, drafted and developed for a decade, and now they're both UFAs. One is essentially out the door. One, it's a massive debate if they should keep him or not.
Well, yeah, and you always have to remember, right, the whole idea of calling it what it is, which is a rental. It's a self-rental, but it's a rental. If you have an expiring UFA on your team come trade deadline time, that is a rental.
Right.
Should the Winnipeg Jets be trading for rentals right now? No. So they shouldn't be keeping rentals right now. This is why you and I couldn't get on board with anyone being like, Nikolai Ehlers was such mismanagement last year, they should have traded him at the deadline. No, because last year was a year when the Winnipeg Jets would have traded for a rental. So why not keep the self-rental that's having a positive impact on your team, because you don't have to pay anything to acquire said rental. So I think it's a important way to kind of look at these players. It's the way we're going to look at Tanner Pearson, the way we're going to look at Gus Nyquist, Jonathan Taves, Vlad Nemestikov, these other guys who are considerably, I believe, all on expiring UFA deals as well. But do you want my analogy, guys? I cooked this up. I was half asleep and I had this vision for a rant that I was going to give you. And then I put it on paper. It was 3 or 4 pages long. I trimmed it down. So it's not 3 or 4 pages, I promise you. But are you ready, Connor?
I'm ready.
Because I have cooked up the analogy of a lifetime, okay?
I'm ready.
This is about
I'm ready.
Trade markets and our understandings, assumptions, and grasp on players and situations that we are emotionally attached to, and understanding that sometimes the market moves in a way that doesn't always feel conducive to where our emotions and stuff are at. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Connor, have you ever heard the saying, when life gives you lemons, you make lemonade?
Rings a bell. Rings a bell.
Rings a bell. Okay.
Rings a bell.
So let's say that you've just received a lemon. Okay.
Okay.
Slogan. This lemon is named Logan Stanley. Okay. So
Nice.
you just received a lemon. Okay. And you received said lemon with the intention of making a pitcher of lemonade. I'm not a juice maker. I'm sure these ratios are going to be a little bit off. I don't think you can make a full pitcher with just one lemon, but we're going to go with it. Okay. You get a lemon. The goal is to make a pitcher of lemonade. Okay. Lemons on their own have no value. It is your job as a juicer to turn this lemon into lemonade, which absolutely has value. Okay. It's so yummy. You can drink it if you want to drink it. It sells for a pretty good price. It's like $10 for a pitcher of lemonade
on a hot summer day. What's better than lemonade? Yes.
Not bad. And then if you already have like some other lemonade kind of like in your fridge, and someone's walking around in the street and they're so hot on that summer day and they're going to pay money for this lemonade, stunning, cinema, beautiful. Okay. Now, here's the problem. You had this lemon and it was your job to make lemonade out of it. And when you first got this lemon, you weren't getting that lemonade. Okay. So you spent all of this money on the fanciest juicer. You got this like from Columbia sugar that's like so good, and you're using Fiji water, and you put all of this resource and you let all these other fruits go moldy while you're trying to turn this specific lemon into lemonade. Okay. Because you want this lemonade. And I understand wanting that lemonade. Lemonade is a good commodity. It's going to be really, really great if it can pan out. But here we are 10 years later after you got this lemon, okay? You wanted to make a pitcher. You have half a cup. I can acknowledge that a half a cup of lemonade is so much better than no lemonade at all. But whether you got a pitcher out of this lemon, okay, or whether you got half a cup, it does not change the fact that you bought this fancy juicer, that you went to Colombia to get all this sugar, that you're using Fiji water to turn this beautiful crystal pitcher of half a cup of lemonade into what it is, okay? It doesn't matter. It's the human condition to feel attached to that half a cup of lemonade that you made because you put all this time and all this effort and all these resources into it. But a half a cup is a half a cup. I ordered Starbucks on DoorDash and it's here, so I'm letting it in with my buzz cut.
Did you get lemon? Now, anything lemon? That would be great.
I probably should, though. It would have been actually kind of cinema if I did.
It would be. Or a lemon. Keep going.
Now, let's think about the trade market, okay?
Yes.
When you get a lemon, you want to make lemonade. You understand that if you get 8 lemons to make 8 pitchers of lemonade, you don't necessarily need to drink 8 pitchers of lemonade, but you can sell your pitcher, or you could do whatever you want with the lemonade, because now you actually have the asset that has value to not just yourself, but also the trade market, okay? Even though in your heart you feel like because of all of this work that you put into this half a cup of lemonade, it should be worth more, the trade value is still based on its worth as a commodity, okay? It's output, it's outcome, what it actually is today in the market. That is what the trade is going to be. If this lemon was just a lemon that you got yesterday, people might be hedging on the futures a little bit more of said lemon. They might think if they were to buy the fancy juicer that they might be able to get something out of it. But you got this lemon 10 years ago, okay? You got half a cup. You spent all this to get this half a cup. You have half a cup. Even though you only had like a third of, or like a little bit for a while, and it's really turned into a half a cup as of late, there's nothing else in this behavior that's really making you think that you're going to get much more than half a cup. Now, I told you that a pitcher of lemonade is worth $10 in the market, okay?
Yes.
We're almost done. Don't worry.
Nope.
You have half a cup of lemonade, which is worth $1, okay? There is absolutely no real predictive information that you have that makes you think that your half cup of lemonade is ever going to become more than that. So if the time comes that your neighbor, Ken Holland, is having a lemonade stand and is willing to spend $2 on your half cup of lemonade because he wants to be able to sell it at his lemonade stand, and he only has lemons and he needs lemonades to sell it. If he wants to spend $2 on your dollar worth of lemonade, you take it. You don't keep this half of cup of lemonade because it is a waste of the pitcher that you cannot fill with anything else, okay? The only reason this lemon ever became half a cup of lemonade, the only reason that we're having a conversation about it having value on the trade market to begin with, is because you bought the fancy juicer, is because you went to Colombia to get all that sugar and all these different things. You need to face the reality that regardless of what you put into it, you have what you have. Life gave you lemons to make lemonade, Connor, and it does not matter how we got here. This is your lemonade, so you must act accordingly.
Wow. Mic drop. It was an honor to listen to that. I'm not gonna lie. Nicely done. Perfect analogy. Nicely done. What if here? I'll throw a curveball back at you. What if you make this half pitcher of lemonade, and in 2 months it's getting poured out on the street? Half a cup. And you're in half or in 2.5, 3 months, it's getting poured out on the street anyways. You're losing that lemonade. Point. You're losing those lemons. You're losing it anyways. Then what?
Yeah, and then if you were to decide, make a decision to invest a little bit more into this lemonade to keep it so that it doesn't get poured onto the street in a couple months, and then it never turns into more lemonade, what was the point of spending even more money to get now the fancier Fiji water and the fancier sugar and all these different things? But
Logan Lemonade Stanley. I love it. I love it.
But okay, here's the thing. The reason that I presented it as an analogy is that this does not have to be specific to this player. This happens all the time with players that people have emotional investment to, or all these different things, or they think they should be more than they are, but they're not. Like these, we talked about how the trade deadline is the time of year where perceptions of players are the most skewed, and the value, like across the board, Connor McDavid is Connor McDavid, Connor Hellebuyck is Connor Hellebuyck. Right. These players have relative value kind of across the league. At the trade deadline, everyone acknowledges that this player that they would trade for in the offseason for XYZ, they're like, yes, I am willing and able to overpay for this player at this time of year in this particular moment in time. And that's when you need to be able to cash in on people who are, this isn't, trying to finesse anyone or finagle anything or try to pull the wool over the GM's eyes or whatever. Everyone's saying, I'm willing to buy an asset for more than it is worth because it is more important to me to have an overpaid for asset than no asset at all. And this is the time of year where people are willing to make those concessions. Right. So you have to act accordingly if you have one of those assets in question.
Yes, that's great take. So
we've arrived. By the way, that's all I have to say. I don't have anything else.
It's almost 10, and I think we've made it very clear that we are in the. Hold on, let me check the poll. The majority, 62% say trade. So we are in that camp. As it stands today, you look at the shooting percentage, you look at the lemons, the lemonade. All of it points back to trading Logan Stanley at the deadline. That's where we sit as of today. And again, I want to end this because I wanted to preface it by saying it, but I'm going to end this by saying this doesn't take anything away from what Logan Stanley's doing. There's
the only reason we're having this conversation
is because he's playing is because he's on a heater. Like, yeah, absolutely. And when I am tweeting stats online and all of this stuff, like Stanley scores the back scratcher clapper, and I'm getting comments like, "Oh yeah, take that." Like, I'm not sitting there like mad that Logan Stanley's doing this. This is awesome. He's got 8 goals. He's on an absolute shooting here. He's in a contract year. He's cashing in. He's doing it at the perfect time, and the fans love it. Everyone in the building is going nuts every time he touches the puck. Like I can't get on board with this notion that if you want the Jets to capitalize on a contract year shooting heater, that means you hate Logan Stanley. That is not. Those two things do not connect.
Absolutely not.
Exactly.
No, so, everything exists. Like, we are in this free trade market, whatever. Like, I was texting you about this earlier. If you're allowed to trade Josh Morrissey for Connor McDavid, you do it. Does that mean that you hate Josh Morrissey? Who said that? Nobody. That doesn't mean that at all. Like, you just have to understand the market dynamics that you're living in right now, and that's okay. And at the end of the day, the reason that these players make as much money as they do is because they're commodities in a trade market, right? Like, you're allowed to move them the same way that you buy low, sell high on stocks and all these different things. You do it with players and assets in this particular situation as well.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. So that's going to do it for us in our Logan Stanley talk. I guess we could go on for another hour, I'm sure, with the Stan talk, because, it's funny because we shouldn't be so surprised. It's like the most polarizing Winnipeg Jets player in the most polarizing position, which is pending UFA status. And like, do you trade him? Do you keep him? And it's Logan Stanley. Like, I don't think that this is a shock that it's like an absolute lightning rod for discussion.
And the most insane year ever, because you have, like, if it was a normal team that was in last in the league, you wouldn't be having this, but this team was the best in the league last year. So you have dueling perspectives where some people are saying this is last year's best team in the league, and there are some people saying this is this year's worst team in the league. So it's like there's so many layers to the polarizing nature of this. And like you said, the most divisive player in Jets 2.0 history, other than maybe like, I don't know, Toby Enstrom or something. Like it's incredible.
Toby Enstrom. We could talk about him for
Billy
a bit
Heinola.
if people want. Billy Heinola. Yeah, I like the part where you were like, all these other lemons got moldy. Billy. Wow. That's quite something.
I don't know. There's more. There's others. I don't know.
Yeah.
And how many draft picks would you leave on the table? I don't know. Doesn't matter. I just had to throw that in there just in case.
Had to get Billy in there somehow. It's a Lyss rant. That was bound to happen at some point. Let's get to our segments. Why don't we? Let's get to... We've got the trending up down segment coming up in a little bit. We've got burning questions as well, which all of them might be about Logan Stanley. Who knows? We can maybe continue this discussion in a moment. But let's first get to our Chuds Power Sports Power Poll. And Chuds got a new website this week, Lyss. It is a sweet new website. I've got it up on the screen here, chudspowersports.com. They've got a ton of deals going on right now. There's snow day deals on Polaris, up to $3,000 off select snowmobiles. And as always, I've been talking all season long on WST Sunday Live. Out at the corner of Gimli, Highway 8 and 231, you are getting the best service possible. They've been serving Manitobans for over 80 years, almost into their 9th decade at Chuds Power Sports. And they sponsor all of our power polls here at Winnipeg Sports Talk and gives us, Lyss and I, and Husson Remo on the Big Show, the freedom to do some pretty fun power polls. So they check out this new website. It looks incredibly sleek. And in the top right corner here, let me just make sure, yeah, you guys can see this. If you click on this red button, e-commerce store, I've been talking for the past couple of weeks as well about truenorthparts.ca. This brings you directly to truenorthparts.ca, where there's a ton of things available. Polaris, Suzuki, all these different brands that you can buy stuff for. ATV snowmobile equipment as well, like helmets, jackets, goggles, a ton of things that are, on clearance right now over at truenorthparts.ca. So not only chudspowersports.com with the slick new website, but also truenorthparts.ca, which you can access through chudspowersports.com. So shout out to the Derminator and the crew over at Chuds. I'm sure they're enjoying all this snow that we've gotten as of late in the snowmobile season. Check them out. Corner of Highway 8 and 231 out in Gimli, or at this slick new website on chudspowersports.com. Let's get to our power poll. And this week we haven't gone away from hockey. Okay, we did holiday treats. That was going away from hockey for sure. But outside of that, I don't think we've really gone away from hockey and still done a sports power poll, but we're doing that today with the NFL. There are 6 teams remaining. 2 teams have punched their ticket to the championship game, and we are doing our top 5 teams in the NFL right now, going into today's games where the Bears take on the Rams and the Patriots take on the Texans. Here it is. I hate to do it, but the Seattle Seahawks are number 1. That game, like I said, the opening kickoff was the game-winning score last night. It was tough. Tough scene for sure. So the Seattle Seahawks, number 1, well-deserved, absolute wagon of a team. Their defense is nasty as well. The Rams at number 2. The Patriots are at number 3, the Bears are at number 4, and the Texans are at number 5. Lyss, I think the big question here is, where are the Broncos, and where would they be if Bo Nix hadn't suffered a broken ankle on the second last play of overtime, where they went on to win and punch their ticket to the AFC Championship? I can't even imagine what Broncos fans are feeling when it comes to the emotions of they punched their ticket to a home AFC Championship game, but lost their quarterback. Crazy.
I actually don't know. That's a good question because we put this together. I don't know where I would have put the Broncos. Would you have put them above the Pats?
Probably
maybe?
3. Yeah, and then Pats 4, Bears 5. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm excited for Patriots Texans today. I think it's going to be kind of fun. Like, this is such a, like, if you had showed me this at the beginning of the season that we would be doing this and after the second week of playoffs or whatever, I would have been losing my mind. Like, where are the Eagles? Where are the Chiefs? Where is everybody? What are the Chicago Bears doing on there? What is going on? But I think this is a good list, and I'm really interested to see what kind of happens with the AFC final now, or whatever you want to call it. I don't speak football. I don't know if that's what it's called or not, because the Patriots and the Texans, I don't think anyone is expecting them to like be Super Bowl contenders this year to the full degree that some other teams were. But here we are.
Well, that was the thing. Like every team sucks.
The Broncos
was the whole point. Like the Broncos and the Patriots were the top 2 seeds in the AFC, and like their schedules were kind of light. The Broncos were squeaking by bad teams every single week, and it was like, who do we really trust at this point in the NFL in general? I mean, the Seahawks and Rams obviously are kind of in a class of their own in the NFC and kind of have been all year. But yeah, it's sorry.
So, and someone in the chat asking who the Broncos
Jared Stidham
backup is. It's Jared Stidham. So it's like,
hasn't started a game in 4 years, has never played a playoff game. Like, tough scenes. Maybe they'll bring Phillip Rivers into the mold. You know, is he still under contract with the Colts? I don't know. Get Phil Rivers slinging the pill in a AFC Championship game.
Tom Brady, is he on the broadcast?
Tom Brady, yeah, he's on the broadcast though. That's a problem. Yeah, this comment from Sammy Smokes. I thought for sure we were going to see a list of fruit on the poll: Logan the lemon, Pionk the pineapple, Perfetti the pear.
Guys, Connor didn't know what he was getting into with that lemon. By the way, like he knew the general concept. He knew that there was going to be lemons mentioned, but yes. I think maybe we could have gone into some fruit polls if Connor had known that he was going to be subjected to 25 minutes of me ranting about fruits and juicing. But no, this is just as much a surprise to him as it was to everybody else.
Exactly. No, shout out to Chuds for sponsoring our power polls here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Really appreciate it. Our first time that we've gone kind of away from hockey. I mean, again, we did the holiday treats, which was a blast. But coming up, we've got the Olympics and stuff like that. I'm sure we'll have some very fun things planned for the Olympics with Team Canada in Milan, which, I mean, it looks like it's going to happen, but maybe that's a rant for a later time in the show. Let's get to our second segment of the show. This one is trending up, down. This is the part of the show where we pick one Winnipeg Jets player who is trending up or down over the past week of play. We can't choose who we took last week, and I wrote it down. Last week, we took Perfetti and Taves for trending up, which was sharp because that was kind of before the breakout list. So we
know Puck.
We know Puck. And then down was Hellebuck and Shen. I took Connor Hellebuck last week. He's off the board. But trending up, down, who do you got? Start with trending up.
Yeah, I don't know if this is he's gone trending up a little bit too often for my liking, considering how his year has been just okay. But you know what? I'm going to give it again to Alex Iafallo. I think that, we talked a little bit about that line looking a little bit better. And, we, in the last 2 weeks, have taken all of Velarde, Taves, and Perfetti as part of our trending up segment because that line is starting to shape up a little bit and everything. So now that the top line is starting to look a little bit better, I want to give some credit to Alex Iafallo. He's got on the scoreboard a couple times. Just kind of that hard-nosed player that I think we saw flashes of last year really liking with Connor and Scheifele. So anytime we kind of get closer to getting back to that, I get excited for him. So he'll get my trending up pick this week.
Yeah, I like that. So remember when I said that if you want Logan Stanley traded, that doesn't mean you hate the story? My trending up pick is Logan Stanley. I'm taking him this week. Yeah.
Absolute demon.
The second he scored that goal against the Minnesota Wild, he got this pick for me. That was, like, you want to see a player playing confident, keeps the puck in, no one between him and the goalie, from outside the dot, just rips a clapper by his ear. Unbelievable. So I'm going to take Logan Stanley. He's on a shooting heater. He's playing confident. And why wouldn't he be? He's in a contract year and he's feeling himself. He's got 8 goals. Career high before is 1. He's scoring a lot of goals right now. And offensively, he's making things happen. So I'm taking Logan Stanley for trending up moments after advocating that the Jets should trade him. And I think that's okay.
His relative value was going up. If his value is going up to this team, it means it's going up to other teams as well, because that is how this works.
Like Stanley on the power play, by the way. Get those points up. There we go. There we go. And he probably likes being on the power play too. He's going to cash in. He's making more money with every passing point, right? All right. Let's move on to trending down. I had a few other players on my trending up list, but like Salo, but he only played 2 games. I want to wait maybe another week. I've liked him this week though. I have followed.
We'll have plenty of
Velarde.
time to get Salo on trending up for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, down.
Oh yeah.
What do you got? Oh yeah, down. What do you got?
Do you want to go first? I don't really have anyone. I'll think about it.
Okay. This is more of a pick from last night's game. I actually think he's been a little bit better as of late, but Vladimir Mesnikov, I'm going to take for trending down. There were a few times last night where, especially in the first period of the game, the Jets had an extended offensive zone shift, and the top line was out there with Morrissey, so they were out there for basically the entire time. And then the third line hops on. Vladimir Mesnikov gets the puck kind of in the corner and just immediately loses it, and the Leafs break the puck out. And it was like 45 seconds of ozone time of good work was undone. The play kind of died on his stick. And like that's going to happen in a hockey game. But Vladimir Mesnikov, he finally got on the board after the healthy scratch coming out of that. But there's just been... I mean, I know he had 2 points last night, but I do think that there are a lot of moments where the puck died on his stick in last night's game. So I'm going to take him for trending down. A player that we haven't taken, we've taken this year, but maybe not at the rate that you'd think. Like we're not taking him every single week, but I'm going to take Vladimir Mesnikov for trending down. I had a few other options too. I'm curious to see where you go with this.
Yeah, this is going to be a weird pick because he's only gotten it once this year. And I know that it's not been the easiest week for him, but bear with me for a second. I'm going to take Morgan Barron as my trending down pick. Is that a bad take?
No. Because No. I'm not scoffing at the take. You went, bear with me here. I'm taking Morgan Barron. That must have been on purpose.
No, it wasn't. I'm not that smart. You know this. I bear with me, BARR with me for a second. Just that this is a player whose role kind of flirts with different usage areas with this team every now and then. And so whenever he kind of controls his own fate almost more than anyone else on this team, in my opinion. Like when he's playing well, he gets promoted. When he's not playing well, he gets demoted kind of thing. Whereas some other players are a little bit more kind of inelastic with where they play on the team. And, Niederreiter finally got the monkey off of his back or whatever. And Vladimir Mesnikov, like you said, okay game yesterday, whatever, but definitely been a little bit better and some different looks and all this different stuff. And then Cole Koepke, I thought's looked good. Tanner Pearson's been scoring some goals, all these different things. Morgan Barron is a guy who continuously needs to prove himself, I think, not just to me, but to the team as well. And not in terms of staying in the lineup the same way that some other guys do, but in terms of where he plays. And there are some moments yesterday, like he kind of got on his horse a little bit on one PK, whatever, but not a great game from him. And hopefully, he just needs to get his feet kind of back up to NHL speed after missing a couple games with an upper body injury. But I had to pick someone. And like, as you can tell by the fact that I deferred to Connor on this one, because usually I go first, like I didn't really have anyone glaring for this, but I'll go with him.
Kabilas turning down the ghost of Gus Nyquist. Yeah. I mean, it's crazy how we list him as a UFA that's like, move him at the deadline, but he's not even playing. So does he have value?
I know. I think about that a lot. But again, that's the sort of guy who falls into the category that I was talking about earlier with my Logan Stanley, my first of 3 rants, if you will, about the whole idea of when a player's shooting percentage.
Fruit is Nyquist?
Pardon me?
What fruit is Nyquist?
What fruit? So he's a banana. No, I don't know. When your expected goals percentage and your goal share are like significantly different, that's the time to try and test the market and see if you can cash in or acquire for a low cost. And he's the type of guy whose on ice goal share is significantly higher than his shooting percentage because his shooting percentage is 0. So he's a guy who there is potential for someone to think the way that I think and try and take a flyer on him. But I think that part of what isn't boding well for him is the fact that he also didn't have any goals last year either. So it does fall into the expected by whom goals, category of like, pardon me?
He had goals last year, just not many of them.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought he didn't score.
No, he scored last year because he was on mini and maybe had like 1 goal at the end of the year. But before that, Minnesota he had 2 goals. And then before that with Nashville, he had 9.
Okay.
So
all right. So then there we go. Yeah. Cinema. But yeah, so he's a guy whose on ice expected goals percentage is definitely a lot higher than his actual goals percentage. So I think that there is potential for someone to want to take a bit of a flyer on that. But like you said, he's not even playing games right now. So that's a bit of a tough sell.
Don't expect a first for Gustav Nyquist. If the Jets move him, don't fall into the trap. No, I am curious as to what his value is. You know, like the Jets just signed him for $3.25 million in the offseason. At the trade deadline last year, I think he was moved for a 5th round pick, if I'm not mistaken. HockeyDB does have the trades up here. A 2nd round pick at last year's deadline. Interesting. That's how about the Minnesota Wild? Anyways, but he was moved for a 2nd round pick last year. So I don't know, maybe like a 5th or something. Like I don't think you can really expect much for Gustav Nyquist, who has just 8 assists this season in 31 games and currently not playing. That's going to do it for Trending Up Down. A lot of great picks in the chat. Waiter saying retain and trade Nyquist. Maybe we should start a new poll. Resign or trade Gustav Nyquist. I wonder what the percentage. Maybe I should do that.
Oh my
the
gosh.
percentage, just to see. No, but that's Trending Up Down. Thank you everyone for dropping your picks in the chat down below. Really appreciate it. And don't go anywhere from the chat because we're getting to our next segment, which is one burning question. This is the part of the show where we open up the chat room for questions, and Lyss and I try and rapid fire through as many as we can before we wrap today's show. So drop your question in the chat down below. And if you're enjoying the stream, make sure you hit the like button as well. Hit the notification bell so you get notified every time we go live here at Winnipeg Stanley Talk. Lyss, my question for you. I have a burning question for you. I wrote it down. Which non-McDavid, Makar, Crosby, McKinnon player are you most excited to watch at the Olympics? So outside of the big four, McDavid.
For Team Canada?
For Team Canada, yes. Sorry, for Team Canada.
Oh boy. Okay. I
have an answer.
am going to say Macklin Celebration.
Yes, that's my answer too.
I am so excited to watch that little guy go out there and just absolutely cook. I am a bit of a night owl, so I do try and watch a ton of San Jose Sharks hockey whenever I get the chance, and it always delivers when he's on the ice. Outside of that, but I think seeing him in an environment that Canada is going to create, which, you know, getting to play with some generational line mates, getting to play with some really cool deep pairings, all this different stuff, it's going to be awesome. He's such a treat to watch. We are not worthy of Macklin celebrating hockey, so I have to pick him. I haven't seen what he looks like on this type of stage yet, the same way that I have a lot of these other players, all this different stuff. I got to go with Macklin. Nice.
I'm with you on that. Macklin celebrating is, I mean, you didn't even say Josh Morrissey, Lyss. Unbelievable.
My bad.
Such
my
a
bad. Well, in the
Jets
chat,
take.
Jeopardy. Is that? I can't even tell. Anyway,
yeah, that is. Yeah.
Tom Wilson.
Yeah,
everyone's names are all different now and stuff.
Yeah, I know. It's YouTube.
But Tom Wilson, low key, under the radar. Hell yeah! Like, oh my god.
Yeah.
What a legend.
It's such a weird take, but I'm ready to see him crush.
I have a burning question for you.
Okay.
I have a burning question for you. CMAC Talk in the chat says, Mark Scheifele, if Braden Point is hurt, who is Team Canada going to take as an injury replacement?
I brought this up on the post-game reaction after the game Thursday against the Wild, where the Scheifele had 4 points. I was saying it says Chris Johnston said they're going to take it right down to the wire in terms of the injury and whether or not he can play for Canada. And it might come down to Scheifele, Johnston, Bedard, one of the skilled guys. I don't think they'll replace Braden Point with a Sam Bennett. I think it's going to come down to one of the skilled guys, and it might come down to who has the best January. Plain and simple. So Mark Scheifele absolutely needs to go on a tear here, and if he has more 4-point games like he did on Thursday against the Wild, that won't hurt. But if it was today and Braden Point is out, I honestly do think it has the highest likelihood, I think, would be Scheifele, then followed by Wyatt Johnston, then followed by Bedard, if I'm ranking those three players. Because I think Wyatt Johnston actually, weirdly enough, replaces the play style that Point has a little bit better, like in terms of the speed. Scheifele's more of a... He's your guy. He's your guy for sure. But no, like Scheifele's absolutely in that conversation and maybe leading that conversation too, if Braden Point won't play for Canada at the Olympics. So he's got to have a good January. Let's get into some of the questions.
Bring up Matt's question.
Sorry.
I am
I'm a little bit higher up.
Are you high up?
This one?
It's a few
Unicorn
down.
too much like goat?
Yeah, great question. Interesting question. I'm obsessed with that. Where because it's one of my favorite words to use, but I feel like I only use it to describe a select very few players. Like Alex Ovechkin, peak unicorn. Like Alex Ovechkin is a unicorn. That type of goal scoring on its own, you could consider it to be in that. But then with like the
Right.
hitting and the play style, all this different stuff, there aren't that many unicorns in the National Hockey League right now. There are a lot of unique players, but I can't look at the second half of this question. Matt says zero BQ. Oh my gosh, OBQ. Do people use unicorn too much like goat? Everyone is my goat. So I use goat way
Right.
too much, but unicorn I feel like is a word that's lost its like mojo a little bit because it's supposed to describe like Alex Ovechkin, and that's about it in the National Hockey League. I think that's such a fun question.
It is. And to answer the question, I do think people use unicorn too much. Yes. Like, I am with you that there are a select few players, and for GOAT too, in terms of greatest of all time, also generational when we're talking about prospects gets used way too much. Like, all of these terms get used way too much, which is okay, like whatever. But I just think, it should be reserved for a select few. Speaking of generational prospects, Waiters says, if the Jets won the draft lottery, who would you want at first overall? Now, this is an interesting question, one that we were definitely debating when the Jets had lost 11 in a row. They're still 31st. Lyss, you're on the clock right now. Jets are picking number one. Who's your pick?
I think I do still have to go with Gavin McKenna in terms of just kind of the way his last couple of years have gone, the perception around that player. A lot of other characters have become more relevant in the conversation. We thought it was going to be kind of a surefire pick there. On the clock, I'm picking Gavin McKenna. And then if he's not available or whatever, if things change, Stenberg, obviously. And after that, to me, there's a pretty significant drop off. Like I know people have,
I put Veerhoff in.
Great opinions on Veerhoff. Yeah, I get that. But I think with the first overall pick, I think I would go McKenna and then Stenberg as the second option.
I think, like, I also want to say that I do think maybe the World Juniors swung people a little bit too much. Every time there's this like generational word gets thrown out too often, this prospect that people view as generational getting put on Team Canada at the World Juniors, they're just like expecting Connor Bedard in Halifax now. Like that's just what what the expectation is. And like Gavin McKenna was never going to do that. I'm sorry, but that was too high of an expectation. So I do think like there's a bit of an overcorrection happening towards Stenberg, but I do think right now it's a coin flip. And as opposed to fencing the take, I'll say Stenberg just so that I'm not saying it's 50-50. But I disagree with you that there's a drop-off after 2. I think there's a drop-off after 3. If the Jets got a top 3 pick and got Keaton Veerhoff as well, I think then there's maybe even Lawrence too. Like I've only really done research on the top like 4 or 5 of the draft because of where the Jets are at. And we're in the middle of a season still. But yeah, I mean, maybe Veerhoff and Lawrence are in a second tier below Stenberg and McKenna.
Yeah, and not that significant. Like I think that once you get outside of the top like 6, 7, 8, I'm
You're
sorry, but I think there's even more of a drop off too. But like I think that right now the whole idea of Stenberg and McKenna being neck and neck in first overall conversations is very legitimate. I'm not seeing Veerhoff being considered to be like most draft boards aren't having him at number 1.
No, yeah, for sure.
But like people are saying in the chat, that said, you take any of them, right?
Yeah.
And this is the conversation around the playoffs and so whatever. Any of those players is better than finishing 2 points outside of a wild card or losing in 4 to the Colorado Avalanche.
For sure.
So.
For sure.
Because even if you get that lemon, you could always turn it into a little bit of lemonade and trade it for someone who's wanting to bet on the fact that this lemonade is going to turn into more lemonade or whatever you want to call it.
Look at that.
You just want to get the best lemon available.
Yeah,
you do.
You want to get the best lemon.
If you're not planning on having the best lemonade stand of all time this season, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, I love it. This is the lemon episode. Doug asks, one burning question. If you trade Stanley, what's the minimum value you expect as a return?
This is a great question because I genuinely don't know.
The more minimum value, like a second round pick, I think minimum. is something that the Jets will have on the table for a guy who has scored 8 goals and is making $1.25 million a year and is 6'7", and GMs view him as a unicorn, and on and on and on and on.
And
we might be
nobody is
creeping into
selling
first round
as
pick
of right now in this market. He might be creeping into first round pick territory. Yeah, absolutely. Especially late first round or whatever.
Yeah. Oh, totally. So we'll see.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
But the minimum value you expect is a return. A second. A third.
A second. No, a third is way too low. Second. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Third is way too low. You got more lemon. You got more lemon juice there. You got more lemonade. Sorry.
It doesn't hit the same coming from you. Sorry.
I'm way off. I'm way off. This is a good question from Darth Skater. Who is McKenna's comparable? A lot of people say now, not like he's going to be this, but in terms of play style, Nikita Kucherov. He's a very good passer, one-touch passes, has a good shot, good one-timer, and just the way he controls the ice from the perimeter is Nikita Kucherov-esque. And again, when you throw comparables, people think like, oh, so you think he's going to be a top 5 player in the league? It's like, no, whoa, chill. But that's kind of his play style comparison. He might be
as opposed to stealing.
Yeah, he might be a Kucherov light, but that's the way he plays. That's what people are saying. When are the Jets going to cut their losses on Nyquist? I mean, yeah, we're 2.5 weeks away from the Olympic break, and then coming out of the Olympic break, there's 5 games before the deadline. So yeah, it's around the corner if they're going to start selling, and he's one of the players that's a pending UFA, and I think they will. They will. The chat seems pretty. Let me run a little late poll here. Liz, I'll bring up another question just so that you can answer it, and then I want to throw up a poll that if the Jets had the number 1 pick right now, who would they take? Because the chat seems pretty set on Stenberg.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I just remember it's so funny because every single year we seem to have like whoever the highest rated Canadian prospect is, it's like generational. And I feel like there wasn't nearly as much. Like Bedard was like the guy, right? And then Celebrini didn't have as much hype as Bedard. And then I remember before that it was like Shane Wright ? And everyone was like, what the heck? But Gavin McKenna, even before, because like last year Matthew Schaefer wasn't considered to be the number 1 consensus pick until days before the draft, right? Like, because he got hurt in his draft year and all these different things. Like, there's just a lot in and around last year. And there was the whole idea of, okay, the Isles won the lottery, so maybe they want James Hoggins and all this different stuff. Matthew Schaefer didn't really separate himself from the rest of his draft class until he started actually playing NHL games. But Gavin McKenna has been talked about since he was like 14, 15 as like the next Connor Bedard in terms of like how highly touted he is as a prospect. So like, I can't quite get away from all of that yet. I know a lot can change in players and their development and all this by when they're 17 years old and everything. It's a hugely developmental time and all this different stuff, but like there's a lot there with that player, and there's a lot there with Stenberg too. I get that, but I think I'm still in the Gavin McKenna camp.
Okay,
holy smokes.
Sounds
like an unpopular take though.
To start, it's Stenberg. By the way, the Stanley poll closed at 61% trade, which is fascinating because on Friday it was 56% re-sign. Although I know, like it's slightly different audience. We're here on a Sunday morning as opposed to the weekday. Some people tune in, during the week to WST. Some people don't. All of those things, but yeah, Darth Skater. If another 5 players are injured on Team Canada, who's the next Tampa Bay player to get the call? Great point. They take in Cirelli. Darren Radish, boom. JJ Moser. Is he Canadian?
I have no idea. I don't know anything about JJ Moser. That's the whole point.
There you go. C-Mac Celebrini is legit. Yeah, this is interesting. Stenberg 62%, McKenna 25%. So clearly still like a top 2.
JJ Moser is Swiss.
JJ Moser Swiss?
Switzerland.
Wow. Him and Nino are going to tear it up. Okay,
what about Charles Edward Destu? What about him?
No clue. That is a player I know nothing about.
There we go. I was like, that's a Quebecois if I've ever heard it. Yeah, he's from Rimouski, Quebec.
Nice.
Wow.
Nice.
So him.
I don't. Him. He'll make Team Canada. Boom. We answered another question. Big time. Yeah. So Stenberg 61%. Interesting. Very interesting. That is one burning question. Thank you everyone for submitting your questions in the chat down below. Very much appreciate it. And hope you guys are all enjoying the stream, enjoying your Saturday, Sunday. Jeez. My Saturday was so bad that I just hope people had a great Saturday. I'm like, hopefully someone else found value in their Saturday. Tomorrow's game list. Jonathan Toews returns to Chicago for the first time to take on the Blackhawks at the United Center. What are kind of your expectations for like the pregame vibe, the video tributes, everything? Does he score? That would be kind of sick.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's gonna be emotional. It's one of those things that, like, not to get too little bro on the show here, but like we don't have a lot of experience with this sort of thing because these generational adjacent players don't pick Winnipeg super often, so we don't normally have to be on the like kind of receiving end of like a player going back to a city they won 3 Stanley Cups in. Not really something we know a lot about firsthand as a community. So I think that I'm trying to picture like, well, maybe this is deflecting the question back to you. What are some, like, Patrick Kane obviously had his homecoming to Chicago, so that's a comparable that we can go with. Right. But like, who else? I'm trying to think of late these players who've had such a large league-wide impact who have gone on to play for other teams and then come back. Like Steven Stamkos back to Tampa Bay, maybe. Like I'm trying to think of other comparisons of what's kind of happened lately and how those went.
Yeah. C-Mac, whoa, that is too much, little bro. Laughing.
I'm sorry.
Way too much. No. Jonathan Quick, good answer, waiters. Yep, that's a good one. I'm trying to think of some other players. I'm blanking now.
But I mean, I feel like the easiest one-to-one is Patrick Kane, right? Because the same level of dynasty, the same level, and it just happened. And yeah, so I think he gets on the board in some capacity, especially just because the stick's been a little bit hotter lately and stuff like that. Like I think, but I think it's going to be very, very emotional for the player, especially because, again, it's a little bit different than Patrick Kane because Patrick Kane, it was just like, it's time to move on, whatever. Jonathan Toews didn't know if he was ever going to play hockey again. Like, I think that there was part of Jonathan Toews that thought he was going to play his entire career there in that city and that team. And like, I don't know, man. It's interesting. It's interesting.
It is interesting for sure. And
he means a lot to that city. We know that. So.
Mitch Marner. That's this week, by the way. Friday. Mitch Marner back
I will
in
be there
Toronto.
No matter what.
And Austin Matthews is fed up with the Mitch questions. Did you see that?
Yeah, I did.
That was funny. I don't blame him, honestly. Mitch is no longer on the team. Mitch is no longer on the team. And it's like, it was right before the game too. Like it was after warm up and they were like, he was like sweating from warm up and like getting ready to go out and play. And it's like, he just spent all day talking about it. He's about to play a game. Like it's yeah.
Just give me a sec, bro.
Yeah, just let me talk about it post game. But yeah, and then they lost. So interesting. Yeah. Anything else you want to touch on before we wrap today's show list? Longer edition of WST Sunday Live, but that's what happens when you talk about Logan Stanley.
Hey,
yeah.
My first newsletter came out this week. You read it. What'd you think? And also, if you say anything mean, I'll cry.
Okay. Well, when life gives you lemons. No, I'm kidding. The first newsletter, I saw a preview of the second one, correct? Which is out now this morning?
No. The second one? Not yet. Girl, it doesn't come out until February.
I wasn't sure which one you were asking me about because you asked me to proofread one last night, which was awesome. Can't wait for that, for people to read that. And the first one was great as well. So throw the link. Do you have the link kind of available? Throw it in the chat.
You think that I'm more put together than I am, unfortunately.
It's there. It's there. You'll find it.
I'll find it.
Yeah. Everyone subscribe to Lyss's newsletter. Great content, great written content. If you want to learn more about hockey, it's absolutely worth your time and worth the read. So there it is. The link is in the chat right now. And And yeah, that's going to do it from us on today's show. Anything else? I mean, Lyss, I'm pumped for tomorrow's game. And look, the Jets, Blackhawks this week, Blues this week, Panthers back at home this week, and then the Red Wings on Saturday. Should be a very fun week. Good opponents. Another original six Saturday night game. Florida coming back. Paul Maurice. It's going to be a fun week. Heritage homestand. They're wearing their Heritage Blues for this week coming up. And it's the first time the Blues will be back since the infamous Manitoba Miracle.
Yes.
Which, by the way,
And
hilarious that the Jets scored a goal with 1.6 seconds left this week. Hilarious.
I was sitting on my couch and I was like, nobody here, because I was by myself, was like, gets how insane I feel just seeing that score bug on the clock and like whatever. I was like, this feels weird.
Morrissey snipes it.
The sacred time.
Morrissey snipes it. You look at the scoreboard, you're like, oh my goodness, there's no time left. How much time is left? 1.6. And it's like the flashbacks, the memories just start flooding in. Unbelievable.
What a time.
What a time. And
yeah.
of course they adjusted it. They adjusted it and they're like, oh, it was with 2.3 seconds left. The Perfetti one was adjusted too. But we don't care about that.
Sure.
We don't care.
The moment is, it's always just what was there in the moment.
Exactly.
For sure. Yeah.
They scored. You look up at the scoreboard. What does it say? That's how you should. Yeah. Like Peg City Scott 2.2. It was the official. Yeah. No, that wasn't. That didn't happen.
That's Fake what news. The government wants you to believe, because it's, I'm going to the Tuesday game against St. Louis with my mom in the stands. I haven't been to a game in the stands all year, so I'm looking forward to that. And then you and I will be doing the post game as well on Tuesday. So it's gonna be another great week. Heritage Blues. It's gonna be a blast. Thanks so much, everyone, for being here today. Everyone, I think, had a lot of fun with our kind of conversations around the trade markets and all that sort of stuff. We always love to have a blast with you guys here on Sunday Live, and it's so much fun to get to read what everyone's thoughts are on what we have to say, and give us more context for points that maybe we hadn't considered or didn't consider enough, and all this different stuff. So it's nice to get to experience this with all of you every Sunday. So fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I needed a Sunday Live to lift my own spirits after one of the worst sporting days in a while yesterday. And the lemon analogy did it. I was bought in fully. That was a fun show. Thank you everyone for joining us.
No one has it better than us right now.
No one has it better than us. Exactly. That was a very fun show. Stay warm out there this week. Donnie Boy saying -40 wind chills. It's getting cold out there. It's getting cold. If you're a seasoned Winnipegger, you know that the +2 last week was just completely, you can't take that. Danielle Bain, TSN, new Winnipegger. We were like, don't take this. Like it's still on its way. The cold is fully here, folks. So stay warm this week. Enjoy your Sunday. Enjoy the NFL football today, if that's your thing. There's also some good hockey today. The Lightning take on the Stars at 1. Very good game. So I'll be tuning into that. And I hope everyone has a great Sunday. Hit the notification bell down below so you get notified every time we go live right here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. We'll be back tomorrow, 1 o'clock, with a Monday edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Huss and Remo will have you covered with their thoughts coming out of the loss to the Maple Leafs and a preview of Monday night's game against the Chicago Blackhawks. Jonathan Toews' return to the Windy City down in Chicago. So from Lyss Houde, I'm Connor Hrabchak. Thanks for watching this edition of WST Sunday Live. We'll talk to you next Sunday, 9 a.m. But before that, 1 o'clock tomorrow, WST Daily, and of course, our post-game reactions right here on the Winnipeg Sports Talk channel. Take care, everyone.